audio questions from you. So let's start with this.
Hello. My question is, if I give my life to Jesus, give him charge over my life, do I still have free will?
All right. Well, this is a very interesting question. Pastor Mark, could you take that one on?
Great question, absolutely. There's a passage in Deuteronomy 30 where the Lord is speaking, and he says this, I call heaven and earth as witnesses today against you, that I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing, therefore choose life. If we shorten that, therefore choose. So we see there God is saying, I'm giving you options, but the choice is yours. And I think it's interesting that God has a will. We know that because he told us to pray, your kingdom come, your will be done. And then we know that Satan has a will, because when he tried to ascend to the throne of God 5 different times, he said, I will. And also mankind has a will. So if you receive Christ, he doesn't take away your will. You still make those choices. I choose to serve Jesus Christ.
Oh, that's very good discussion on the 3 different beings with will there. Pastor Glaze.
Well, I look at Peter. You know, Peter was a follower of Christ, and I know that Christ hadn't died and rose from the dead at that point, but I believe that Peter accepted Christ, you know, for who he was. And we see that when Peter was in the garden, when Christ was on trial, that Peter denied Christ, you know, 3 times. So I would look at that and say, well, you know, Peter had given his heart to Christ, and he, out of his free will, chose to deny Christ. So, yeah, I think it's very possible, you know, once you give your life to Christ, that you still have a free will and you still can make that choice, make choices.
All right, absolutely. Yeah, Ray.
Well, I would say you don't have free will now, so you're not going to lose anything. So you don't have to worry about it.
I knew we were going to get another. No, you know, just a minute, put your glasses on.
Here's the thing. What do you mean by free will? What do you mean by the will? I mean, obviously we're all beings who make choices according to what we desire. That's what a human being is. Any rational being, a reasonable being, means that you can make a choice. You know, a bird, a sparrow, has to make a nest the way sparrows make nests. They don't have the ability to do that, but they might be able to choose at some degree. Plants can't choose at all. We are the kind of being that has a will, but that doesn't mean we're indifferent. That means that we do what we want to do, and that's the problem. You want to know the kind of freedom you have now. I mean, you're talking about, well, what will happen to my freedom if I give my life to Christ? Here's the freedom that you have right now apart from Christ. Ephesians 2, you were dead in your trespasses and sins in which you once walked, following the course of this world, following the prince of the power of the air, the spirit who is now at work in the sons of disobedience, among whom we all once lived in the passions of our flesh. Here's your free will, carrying out the desires of the body and of the mind, and we were by nature children of wrath. That's where you are outside of Christ. You're a slave of sin. Jesus said, whoever commits sin is a slave of sin. You're free to do whatever you want. What do you want to do apart from Christ? You want to sin. You want to be your own God. That's where you are. It's called bondage. Unless Christ sets you free, you'll never be free indeed. So when you come to Christ, you are now free to obey God, something that you don't want to do now. Christ sets us free from sin, and we're in bondage to sin until he does.
Wow. Good preaching. Good preaching there. Thank you. Pastor Jay, what's your take on this?
You know, I believe that that's why the Bible constantly talks about renewing the mind. In Romans chapter 12, in Galatians chapter 5, it talks about choosing between walking in the spirit and the flesh, is because even though you're born again, now you have the ability to walk in the Spirit. You have the ability to communicate with God. You have the ability to draw from that. But there's still the free will, because the soul is the mind, the will, and the emotion. So you still have the ability. I think the person's asking the question, to your point, is, am I a robot? Am I going to be a robot? When I get saved, now all of a sudden am I that? But if you are that, you can't be a worshiper. A worshiper has to be able to make a choice. And I believe that we still have that ability. Yeah. Now we just have the Spirit of God to draw from, not just our carnal nature.